Welcome to Apostate of Mind. I'm Apostate and last week on Facebook, I was seeing in my newsfeed everyone talking about Mark Driscoll and some controversy and drama going on around this prominent pastor. So today we're going to be talking about what this controversy is all about. So supposedly Pastor Mark Driscoll was kicked off stage at a Christian conference. So we're going to be talking with former pastor Mark Peralta. You could join us on stage. Mark, I remember you used to be a big fan of Mark Driscoll when you were a pastor. So tell us, who is he?
Yeah, for sure. So Mark Driscoll, he's known for being like this very fundamentalist, five-point Calvinist, kind of hellfire and brimstone type of preacher. But he became famous for starting Mars Hills Church in Seattle, Washington, which came to have over, I think, 15 satellite locations. And also for Acts 29, which is a parachurch ministry that does church planting. And so, yeah, so I've been listening to a lot of the YouTube channel videos from him and just, yeah, we go way back.
So what is all this controversy about? Tell us a little bit about what happened.
So first of all, this is not really happening at Mars Hill Church. Actually, that church doesn't exist anymore because its elders at some point realized that, Mark Driscoll is not fit for ministry, actually. And he gets
so there's already some prior history with him.
Yeah, for sure. And, the church ceased to be after he left, which is kind of weird. But now he is sort of like a visiting speaker at a men's conference in Springfield, Missouri, in someone else's church, a church led by Pastor John Lindell, who is a mentor of Mark Driscoll, no less. And so while this men's conference is taking place, I need to show you my screen here. Let me just add that. This performance is featured as part of the men's conference.
Okay. And so is this performer, like, how is this religious or related to religion, this performance?
Yeah, well, his name is Alex Magala, and he's actually a famous performer. He's been on AGT and has his own act. Yeah. So he's mostly known for sword swallowing.
Okay.
And part of the act involves him climbing on a pole. And I read up a little bit about it, and apparently it's like a legit aerobatics type of art form. It's a Japanese art form that's been performed for centuries.
Amazing talent to be able to do that.
And he actually climbs up to the very top of it, and then with the sword in his body.
Oh my goodness.
And then he goes upside down and he seems to kind of free fall. And just before he hits the ground, he stops with his feet. And so, like, it's just crazy. So he gets
risks
invited.
His life to do this performance.
Oh yeah, he's amazing. And so he gets invited to this men's conference, and apparently Mark Driscoll didn't care for it. And so he starts on a monologue where he's describing elements of the performance as if to say, like, this whole thing is demonic, and that's where the name Jezebel comes from.
Yeah, so give us a little background. Like, what is the Jezebel spirit? What is that trying to imply?
So, I mean, there is a passage in the Old Testament that talks about Jezebel, and she was known or associated with Asherah, who was a goddess within the Canaanite cult, the Canaanite religion. And her worship, along with the worship of Baal, are sort of linked to this tree, And so apparently the ancient Canaanites would worship Asherah by doing some things on top of a hill underneath a tree.
Okay.
Yeah. And some of that involved actual ritual sex. So there were temple prostitutes that would engage in ritualistic sex, which had nothing to do with pleasure, but it was more like they're trying to arouse Baal that's up in the sky looking at them doing this. And that's why they had to be on top of a hill or on a high place so that Baal could see what's happening and get aroused, masturbate, and ejaculate on the clouds in order to fertilize them to bring about the rain.
Okay.
So this was happening, and that's sort of like where the whole story comes from.
So spirit of Jezebel is what, like sexual, and what would you say?
So, I mean, like what happens is that Christians have a tendency to spiritualize things because the whole spirit of Jezebel, first of all, that's not even in the Bible.
Yeah, I'm
The
like,
story and
who would
the
win,
prophet.
the Holy Spirit or the Jezebel spirit? Like, it's not a thing that you hear about.
Yeah. So what these people say is that there is a demon that is behind anything pornographic, sexual, like strip clubs, things of that nature, as being led by this demonic, and this demon has a name and is Jezebel.
Yeah, it's not the person pursuing those sexual things. They're not responsible. It's the demon that's leading them to do these things.
Yeah. So what he's saying is that this was demon led. What just happened, but you got to listen to what he says.
I've been up since 1 o'clock in the morning. The reason I'm hoarse is I have been praying for you, and my heart is very burdened for you. And I want to be very careful with this, and it's not what I want to say, but the Jezebel spirit has already been here. The Jezebel spirit opened our event.
This is I feel like even the act of rebuking is putting himself in the position of being like Jesus and having this God authority. Like, I've been praying, I've been talking to God, and I need to tell you, you're doing this wrong.
You're so right, because you know what ends up happening is, I won't give it all away, but he ends up self-ascribing the concept of he is like John the Baptist in this whole thing.
Yeah, it's like,
so
like, you think they're Jezebel spirit, but you're giving us like narcissistic spirit.
Oh yeah, for sure. And so I think that's exactly what he's trying to do. He's trying to put himself already in a position like I'm speaking, or God has spoken through me.
Yes.
So
I've come with a message to tell you that you're engaging in bad things, like stories in the Bible.
Yeah. And let's not forget that this is not his church.
Oh,
this is immediately after the performance.
So he doesn't have authority there whatsoever.
No.
He's self-appointing himself that authority.
Yeah.
This is a rebuke and a correction of no one. This is an observation. Before the Word of God was open, there was a platform. It was a high place. On it was a pole.
You see what he's doing? So he's pointing down at the whatever's down there, the little stage where the performer did his thing. And he's saying that's a platform, therefore is a high place. So there's the first leap of, the
They always
first
apply so much
stretch.
symbolism and take things so literally, like, oh, same. It was in the story. There was a pole. Oh, there's a pole. Like, same things going on. Like, just because you see a pole doesn't mean that same context is applying here.
Yeah, and we know that that's a platform is not a high place. So the biblical understanding of this, this would have been a hill, a very tall hill. That's a high place, not a little platform.
So he's saying,
So
oh, stage, hill, same thing.
same thing. There's now a pole. So therefore is an
That pole
Asherah
from
pole.
the Bible.
Correct. Yeah.
Mhm.
Listen to it.
An Asherah. The same thing that's used in the strip club for women who have the Jezebel spirit to seduce men.
So yeah, it's
Yeah.
that the women are seducing the men, they're tempting the men. It's not the man going to the strip club for the purposes of seeing these naked women and touching them and paying money to do it. It's the woman having this spirit that's leading these men to do these things.
Yeah. And you know what? I'm going to go out on a limb here and assume that the majority of those men were likely Christian too. Let's not forget that. It's not like a bunch of like heathen men. It's like probably church going people too.
And now he's applying and trying to demonize strippers in the strip club for pole. He's connecting the stripper pole to the pole in the Bible.
Yeah, and you know what that is this is a pure example, a perfect example of gaslighting.
And
He's painting a
parallelomania.
reality that is not true, which is there's a demon behind any and all sexual acts, right? And therefore, that is the reason why those things exist and why these men are vulnerable to the spell of the demon. And so like that, this is an example of that.
And I want to say a side note too. I feel like demonizing strippers is dangerous for women. They could have a legal career where they're making money and selling a service that is in demand, but because it's being demonized, a lot of times it's like, oh, you have this demon spirit, you're seen as subhuman, and they are treated badly because they're painted as this undeserving or sinful, like deserving punishment type of people. And so I think it can be a harmful perception.
Yeah, I mean that's horrible. That's part of the problem, folks, is the bigotry and the hatred that is oftentimes the result of people saying this from the pulpit, and then you have listeners that go back to their lives and now this is what they're thinking.
Yeah, because they're
So,
thinking God does have the authority, and then this is a godly leader. God is speaking to this man. He's got to be right, and
for
they
sure.
listen to it. They believe it.
Yeah, in fact, you're going to hear some people from the audience that are going to express how they have a problem with him getting kicked out. Yeah. So, all right, let's see.
In front of that was a man who ripped his shirt off like a woman does in front of a pole at a strip club.
So first of all, he didn't do that at all.
As if only women can, that's a woman thing. That's a stripper woman thing to rip off your shirt. So him doing that makes him like that. That's such another leap.
Yeah, and so actually he's got on a very fancy looking performer's vest, and he just takes it off. Yeah, and he's got a phenomenal body, but I don't think it's about that. I think it's about the actual feat, because he's got to get up on this pole. And I'd imagine you don't want, like, as the man is sliding down upside down with the sword in his mouth, that you wouldn't want something get caught on its way down. So it's not even like a sexual, like, provocative move. It's more like, hey, I need to take off my vest here before I can actually do the performance.
It's a practical life-saving aspect of the performance.
That's right. And so he's immediately falsely associating it with something that happens in a strip club. And so
Anyone could read anything into anything, like,
yeah,
ooh, they're wearing high heels just like strippers wear high heels. Oh, red lipstick just like prostitutes wear red lipstick. Like, you just can't just connect people like that just because they have a feature of somebody else.
no, yeah, exactly. But he's got more to say. So let's hear him.
That man then ascended. See, our God is not arrogant. He doesn't ascend. Our God is humble. He descends.
Okay, so this is another ridiculous thing that he says. Because the man climbs up the pole, right?
That makes him like the resurrected Jesus.
Well, that's what I'm saying. That's what I thought, is because he says our God descends because he's a humble God. But I'm thinking, whoa, what about Jesus' ascension? Right?
Yeah, it sounds like he was playing both sides. Like, he's ascending. That's something only Jesus can do. But then he turns it around and he's like, and our God goes down. He went up. So like,
And in reality, he just went down for a weekend. So what's the big deal?
right.
Right? He was out, he was back up right before right after the weekend.
Yeah. What? Only one person can ever go up or down. Like, what about an elevator? You're going up and down an escalator. Is that demonic too?
Yeah, is that demonic as well? Oh, and I also thought, where else there are lots of platforms?
Church.
Exactly. So are pastors on high places worshiping Asherah because they're on a platform? No.
Yeah, maybe the cross is their pole.
Well, yeah, that's another thing too, is that the cross is actually the same thing.
Jesus hung off that pole.
Yeah, they replaced the pole. There's no doubt about that.
Mm-hmm.
And then he swallowed a sword, and Jesus cried, okay, Pastor John, I'll receive that.
Okay, I think he ran out of examples at this point, because he just now gets up and it's like, I guess he heard John Lindell say something at this point.
Yeah, where was he going to go with that? Swallowing a sword. I don't even know where he could have taken that. Do you?
No, I can't imagine. Seems awful convenient that that's when his monologue stopped. But watch what happens next.
There's also a sword in Sorcerer in the Stone. Are you going to make a connection there?
Very typical. Yeah.
Thank you.
So here's another shot.
He's out of order. Look, there's a pole. The podium.
So I don't know if you caught that, but from the audience, I've heard this a few times now. There's people that are yelling like, "Oh man, I can't believe this is happening," because you have to imagine that on that men's conference, there was a lot of guys that went there because Mark Driscoll went there. You see?
Mm-hmm.
And so they're like protesting, like there's another audience member that clearly yells out to John Lindell, you're not authority here. Like, they're even rebuking the lead pastor because Mark Driscoll just got kicked off.
That's a dangerous thing, is all you have to do is convince people that God is speaking to you, and then you can say anything and do anything. And people just think that since you have God's authority, then it must be right. And then if you try to silence that voice, it's like, oh, you're trying to censor the word of God. You're getting in the way. You're anti-God. It's a really dangerous, slippery slope.
Yeah, these people, they sound violent. So that's John Lindell, the main pastor.
So now he's trying to invoke the scripture, like, first come to the person before you do it publicly, and that whole principle.
That's exactly right. He's citing Matthew 18.
Mm-hmm.
Listen to what he says.
How convenient.
talked to Mark for a half hour. There was not one word of that. He's out of line. If he wanted to say it, he could say it to me. You may not agree with me. You may not agree with him. But we are brothers in Christ, and there's a right way to handle this.
Whoa.
Yep. And that's the extent of that footage. You can see how he's seems very upset because Mark did not approach him personally, which is indeed what that passage is teaching, although the passage is more so in the context of when a fellow brother offends you.
Right. That's a
But-
different context.
Yeah, in this case, the pastor is taking offense,
Right.
but
It's not a personal offense to him.
it's not exactly. And so, yeah, I don't know. There's a little more to this story. It sounds like immediately after this thing, both of them were up on stage again. Unfortunately, I don't have that footage, but I read that they reconciled. They forgave each other for, being upset at one another
On stage?
on stage.
Okay. Publicly.
And then something about like, yeah, we've got our differences, but what we do share in common is most important. And Mark Driscoll reassured John Lindell that he is a spiritual leader for him, and so they look up to one another.
I just want to
and,
say
like,
that that's like a perfect picture of what it's like to be in Christianity. It's like you're never going to agree with any other Christian because there's so many contradictions in the Bible. There's so many problematic verses in the Bible. So you kind of end up picking and choosing which ones that are tolerable and kind of saying the ones that are crazy, oh, that was that time, or we just don't understand what was going on then, or context has changed. So you're constantly just trying to say, well, only these few things really matter, and all those other things, they don't really matter. Like, as long as we agree on these core things. But at the end of the day, you don't realize there's so many differences that you're ignoring. There's so many problems you're overlooking, and all you can hang on to is these things. Then that's a problem.
Yeah.
That
And not
doesn't
to
unify
mention-
you. That's a problem with the religion.
And not to mention how they also, it seems like they just took the opportunity to like explain away what just happened, but they're overlooking some other things, in my opinion, that just sort of like give me a sense of insecurity about it. Like I feel like there's something shady going on beyond just what happened. And the reason
what do
for
you
that
mean?
is, well, so for one thing, I think that the pastors sort of failed to address the issue here. Like, if the church hired by contract Mr. Alex Magala, and the only thing that he's really known for is his performance, like that's what he's selling, that's his product. Yes, he does have a background in male stripping. Apparently, he was a male stripper before he became a Christian. Now he's a professing Christian. His own boss is a member of Mark Driscoll's church. So they know about the guy. They know what he does and what he's known for. He probably got paid a lot of money to be in that conference. So why are we not addressing the fact that, hey, Mark, why do you really have a problem with this guy's performance?
I wonder if it was a woman sword swallower doing the same thing, if he would have a problem with it, because he's almost inferring that's what a woman does. A woman takes off her shirt like that, a stripper. And like, isn't their whole concept, if he's there and he's a professing Christian, like, isn't that a success story? Like, he once was this and now he's this, and now instead he's taking it as he's bringing in this evil spirit into the church. Well, isn't that what Jesus supposedly conquered? And I don't know.
Yeah,
Anyway.
if they were acting like Jesus, they would have been welcoming of the guy, as Jesus was welcoming of prostitutes and whatnot.
Right. Right.
And you also do have to wonder, like, how come the people at John Lindell's church didn't think that this might be kind of a risque act to feature in a men's conference?
Yeah. Did they not communicate about that beforehand? Did they not know what that entailed?
That's right. Yeah. And how come Mark, was taken a surprise when we know, like, generally these sort of events are well planned in advance,
Mm-hmm.
and there's meetings about everything happening, and it's not something that they just like improvised. So that's a little shady. The other thing that's shady to me is that
Well,
if you look,
I just wanted to say too, I was thinking if he has a problem with this idea of worshiping Asherah, that's to say you think Asherah exists as a god. If you don't believe Asherah exists, then there's no problem, somebody having a symbol of a fake non-existent god. And so I think it just
Mhm.
goes to show too that part of believing in Christianity is the belief that these other gods exist.
Yeah, and then that's how they sort of they're gonna redefine that into a more of a demonic spirit. So they downplay the fact that indeed Asherah was at some point a goddess of the Canaanite religion, which was the heritage, the background to Judaism. And so this was part of their heritage too. But then, over the years, as the religion became more of like a monotheistic type of deviation from their ancient polytheistic ways, Asherah is just a demonic entity. It's not like a goddess anymore.
And I know we've talked about on previous episodes how there's archaeological evidence that Asherah was worshipped alongside Yahweh and Baal, and that Asherah was Yahweh's wife, if I'm not mistaken, right?
In its later rendition, yeah, but in its much earlier rendition, she was actually the wife of El. So she would have been the
Hmm.
mother of the 70 sons of El, which would have included, well, we really don't know for sure, but it's all there. Like, it's all part of the archaeological record. There are more Baal and Asherah idols than there are Yahweh or Jesus idols in ancient Israel.
Wow.
So
Interesting.
yeah. So going back to John Lindell and what's happening now, that makes me feel like perhaps they meant to do this, which if they meant to do this, and this is not like something that just went wrong, right? A conference gone wrong, so to speak, but more of a pre-planned, kind of like a WWE type of theater is what comes to my mind that's happening here. Mark Driscoll getting kicked off stage. That's kind of weird. Is because if you check out Mark Driscoll's YouTube channel, he's already had, within the past 4 days. So immediately after the controversy at that men's conference, he's published 3 episodes in his channel that are live recordings of preachings. So it is as if he had sermons already predetermined to air immediately after this thing went viral.
Either that or if he had a plans changed and now he's going on this Jezebel rant to justify his position or his point.
I thought about that, but then he would have to be extremely good to be able to come up with sermons on the fly like that, because it really does sound like he's addressing this directly. It's sort of like it's given him a platform, no pun intended, to speak against the LGBTQ plus and much more. Because
I didn't hear him say anything about the LGBTQ community. Where does that part come in?
Well, because if you listen to his sermons about it, he's going to tell you that that's also part of homosexuality. It's a Jezebel spirit that is within us.
Oh.
That's responsible for any and all sexual deviations, aberrations, unbiblical sex.
And talk about another harmful teaching, because man, if we now understand there's more science and biology and there a physicalness to sexual orientation and gender and sex, then it's really anti-science when you try to say that it's more spiritual, it's an external factor, and it makes you think that those things can be resolved by rebuking the spirit or moving it, and it just doesn't work like that. These are how people feel or what they are biologically, and so it's harmful to think otherwise.
Super harmful. And, I just don't know how else to feel about this, because really, I'm going to be honest here. I don't know exactly what went on, but I do care about Alex Magala, the performer himself, because I wonder how he would have felt. He himself is a Christian. He gets
Oh
invited,
yeah.
paid for perform. This is his act. And now this very famous, very influential pastor has now labeled his performance as one characterized by the demonic spirit of Jezebel.
He just
You
poo-pooed
know?
all over his life-threatening, world-renowned performance. If he's on the AGT stage, he's obviously very gifted, has a very unique talent. And in seconds, he just demonized it and diminished the hard work that went into all that he does and talent.
Oh, for sure. And I think that, and the guy has actually spoken about it. Okay, so here's what the performer says. In response to recent criticisms of Stronger Men's Conference produced by James River Church, I feel compelled to clarify the context and intention behind my specialty act. My performance, which some have controversially likened to inappropriate entertainment, is deeply rooted in a historical and cultural tradition and became a respected discipline showcasing human strength and agility. I am a Christian and have always aimed to use my talents to inspire and entertain audiences in a way that respects my faith. The act in question was designed to be a celebration of physical human achievements and is aligned with James River Church's purpose in bringing others into the light of God. It's essential to approach such performances with an understanding of their intention rather than reducing them to mere entertainment. Pastor Mark Driscoll's remarks about my act failed to recognize the difference between a male striptease and a stunt performance rooted in art and sport. Only an uninformed person would draw a comparison between my act and an inappropriate performance. I feel that this danger act is perfect for the Stronger Men's Conference. It provides me with the inspiration to the audience and permission for them to reach new heights of what's possible in their lives. I thought that was
Gotcha.
well
So that was
said.
the connection of why they chose this act, is because it's about stronger men. He's this incredibly strong, talented guy.
Right.
And even, I think he did a great job speaking for himself, but even him calling male strip dancing an inappropriate performance is still a little bit short-sighted. Pole dancing, for example, I know it's different than a male striptease. Maybe he's comparing it to that, but pole dancing, for example, is very hard. You have to be very strong to hold yourself up by your arm and, to slide down that pole. You're holding your body weight on a hard metal pole and sliding your bare skin down it. You get bruises. It takes a lot of strength and hours and hours of practice. And you've got to make it sexy and pretty and look elegant. It's a lot of work that I think people don't appreciate as an art form and as a true dance style as much as they should.
Yeah. And so that's the part that bothers me the most, is that in their little reconciling little talk they had after the event, where they made peace about it, never do they mention, hey, by the way, or never does Mark ever admit, oh, perhaps I, read too much into the situation. Perhaps I was ignorant of the art form and whatnot. Nothing is ever said to justify why this man's performance is actually legitimate and decent and artistic,
they're just like, we
not
still
what
love
Mark.
each other, love. So
Right.
it's all good.
They made it all about how like they reconciled. We have our differences, but never really excusing the performer. I thought that was of poor taste.
Yeah. Or appreciating what he did.
Yeah.
Yes. Thank you so much for your insights, for bringing us the tea, what's going on, and your response. And thank you to everyone watching.
And don't forget, folks, to like and subscribe to our channel.
This has been
Apostate
Apostate of
of
Mind.
Mind.
They call me a god.